Peter, happy anniversary. It's been technically, properly 365 days, or actually a little bit more than that, since Horns Up episode 0 was released, which was on December 15, 2018. And now it's been more than 365 days later, and we're still doing this.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Horns up.
Horns up. Horns up
Yeah.
and congratulations.
I think this is like one of the longest things I've done after my blogging. So, yeah, props to both of us for keeping this going.
And actually, and it's something that, touchwood, we're still enjoying. We haven't yet had differences of opinion when it comes to
Our
our artistic freedom, etc.
Yeah, it's been a great thing, man. I mean, I still remember us first discussing it, meeting below my office, and surprise, it was at a Starbucks. But discussing how we're going to do it, and we just dove headfirst into
exactly.
it, right?
Yeah, we just dove headfirst into it, and that has led us to now what is christened as our annual list or our annual Horns Up picks.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing for me growing up listening to metal has always been like checking out at the end of the year lists. And
because Christmas was always a holiday, I would devote Christmas morning over the last 4 to 5 years to essentially going through all of these lists and just checking out all the music that I've missed.
Yeah.
And then spending almost the entire day or the next 2 or 3 days checking out these lovely bands who have surprisingly made other people's lists, but I had not even heard of.
Yeah, dude, I remember being very old school and buying sometimes the magazines and going through them.
Exactly, yeah.
Because access being such an issue, it's like, okay, I'll have to save up now to get this album because this guy listened to it and
it was in the list, exactly. Yeah.
And now think about it. You just make a Spotify playlist or Apple Music playlist and there it is.
Yeah, but that's what's weird. I still can't seem to rely purely on data because sometimes data doesn't paint the picture that you want to paint.
And I think one thing also that has happened personally to me over the years is I've kind of distinguished or kind of created that own thought process of mine. So I know, for example, if there's a particular writer, and now considering there are a handful of writers, I'll know that, okay, if this writer recommends something or this publication recommends something, sure shot, I'll like it. But
exactly,
sometimes I'm completely going to disagree. I mean, our list will clearly
our list will hopefully bring out the best of us because they are supposed to be our best albums.
Yeah, and
of the year.
That's what I want to like put out a disclaimer in there is we've discussed this.
And I know where you're getting at. Of course, this is a subjective list, and that's because it's a list that is a product of the current time that we are looking at it. It may be that the 5 albums will change tomorrow, will change maybe an hour later.
Yeah, and that's
absolutely fine.
That's purely just because we have only that many hours in a day to actually listen to music.
Exactly.
And now the music I've spent that much time listening to is purely out of just my subjective taste and what I'm feeling, sometimes the mood, like we've discussed in the past.
Absolutely. And I must give credit to where it's due. I think the podcast or Horns Up and you and essentially what we've been doing around this space has made me fall back in love with the genre as such, because I've noticed that this year, after so many years, I actually found it really tough to pick a best 5. And that's not because I was being really elitist or snobby or anything of that sort about it. It's because this year, after a long gap, I've actually heard that much more music and a lot of music appealed to me, and I eagerly wanted to listen to it, right? You're not just doing a machine kind of a job where you're just, listening to new music because you have to listen to it. You're actually listening to it because you want to listen to it, which made it really tough. I kid you not, when we started doing this exercise, right, where for this week, I started maybe a couple of days back, my first whittled down list of Contenders included 38 albums.
Wow.
And it took me literally 2.5 days to whittle that 38 down to a list of 5.
And now you
And-
made me do rankings, so you can imagine how much harder it was for me.
Oh yeah. The other thing that we've done this year definitely is because is just rankings, because it just makes it a more exciting thing to listen to or to consume for other people. It becomes a game. We're not being safe. We are actually sticking our necks out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just taking a look at my list.
So, I started off with 38 as contenders of sorts. How many did you have contenders of sorts?
So my go-to thing is Last FM. Last dot FM. I'm still old school that way because I have it linked to everything else. So I just took a quick look at that, and I said, okay, just clicked on the last year most listened to, and I was surprised because a lot of music I've been listening to has been like not purposely reaching out for. It's just that what's available, what I'm in the mood for and all. And I was like, wow, I listened to this album so much.
So much, yeah. Was there anything that really like sprung to your surprise? Like if you go by, and this is, I didn't want to start off with this, but the data point, I did that Apple Music thing and all of that too.
Oh, you finally did that?
I did it, yeah. And it really surprised me with the result, because it's definitely not an album that I'm picking in my best of at all.
Oh yeah, I mean, so I'll
Guess which album I'm talking about. It's something we've discussed it on the podcast.
Oh no,
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about it, can we just bring this up in the conversation now and get over
Now
it?
and get it over with.
Is it really? Would you?
Four-letter band name.
Yeah. Would
four-letter
anyone
band name.
consider it a top album of the year?
I hope not, except if they're mainstream press.
Yeah, and I saw it, and I think I linked you to it, and I was like, man, this is why, like, now what I was talking about earlier, right? How I'm able to distinguish.
Yeah.
Because I saw a lot of lists, and I have very like purposely not looked at them because I didn't want my judgment to get like, swayed in a way. But when you see a band like that on the number one list, and considering we dedicated an hour to it,
Exactly. Yeah. So yes, we are talking about Tool.
yeah,
We are talking about Fear Inoculum. I've listened to it a lot, and clearly I have data to prove that it's one of my most heard albums. But to me, I think that would be the dud of the year. Most disappointing release of 2019 is Tool's Fear Inoculum. Close contender, Baroness's Golden Grey.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. Like
Third contender for me, Dave Ellefson's solo project, because it sounds absolutely unlike Dave Ellefson.
Okay. Like Baroness was disappointing, and I think the only reason it was disappointing for me is because I had high expectations, right?
No, that's the same reason why we were disappointed in Tool. We had really high expectations. And I think both of us bought into the hype of it.
Yeah.
And because it was such a momentous, gargantuan occasion. And then, again, go back to our Music on the Mind episode in which we dissect that album and try and come out with a clear judgment on why we didn't like it. And that's not to say it's a bad piece of music. It's just when you put it in the context of being a Tool album. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right. Let's get this cracking, man. Go
Good.
on.
We got the elephant out of the room.
Done.
Right? All right. So 38 releases for me personally. Approximately how many for you?
Dude, I had like around 30.
40, 30. Yeah.
40.
Yeah.
And that was the
okay.
thing. Like, so there were like some albums which, again, because we've interviewed the artist, I've been keep listening to it, and also I kind of like, okay, but did I really enjoy it?
Really
that
enjoyed
much?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's how I kind
Those
of
were,
eliminated those.
Yeah.
But some of them, like, okay, let's
just start this off. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is, or the format of this particular episode will largely be, we're doing a quick round of honorable mentions. These are all the albums that we really enjoy listening to, but somehow for whatever reason haven't made our top five. And then of course we'll start our top 5, and this time we both are doing rank lists. So yeah, let's see where that leads us to. Honorable mentions. Why don't you?
Okay, I'm going to start off alphabetic order because that was the only way
that's fine.
I could do that.
Okay, cool.
So, of all alphabets, I start off with K, and this band should come as no surprise. The Kryptos Afterburner. It was really hard Like, I'm sure it'll make it in my top 10, but I was doing top 5 this time. But
Okay.
what an album. I mean, we've talked a lot about this release. It was great talking to Nolan also and kind of seeing where they came from on this album. But purely just looking from the listens and how much I enjoyed the album, yeah, man, definitely an honorable mention.
All right, continue.
Lord,
next?
Lord,
Lord,
Fallen
okay,
Idols.
Fallen Idols.
Again, an
Excellent,
album I
yeah.
really enjoyed.
Excellent.
One thing why it's come in the honorable mentions is, man, you had no idea what was the next song, right? And that
Of course,
kept
yeah.
you
It was,
guessing.
yeah. That was,
And it was so well produced, so good. Yeah, man, had to be there. Next one, coming to M, which I think maybe because they released it in December is kind of in the honorable mentions. I've just listed it and put this Stoner Goodness from Singapore.
the Marishana album.
Yeah. I really enjoyed
much better
that.
album than the first one.
And it's a huge
Definitely.
leap. Like, you knew it.
It is
from
a
the-
huge leap, yeah,
You
yeah,
heard it
yeah.
from the singles itself, but like when I
Yeah.
heard the album, I was like, oh man, if they only released it like slightly, it would have been way higher on a lot of
people's lists.
And I'm
I
pretty
definitely
sure
agree.
they
yeah.
missed out on most of
Yeah.
the mainstream ones, but yeah, man, had to give a shout out to these guys. Noisem, Cease to Exist. Again, a comeback album of sorts. An album I was really looking forward to last year. And boy, I mean, thrash, grind. They got like everything in there. Furious
Okay.
had to be there. Coming on to P and shout out to Pacifist, Grayscale Dreams. This purely made it in the honorable mentions because it was an EP, and I'm really looking forward to where they take this sound now on a full length and how they're going to.
They've got a new EP coming out with 2 songs.
Oh wow!
I know that they've recorded it. I know that. I think it's in the. It's almost ready to be released. You should be expecting that soon.
Yeah. So yeah, Pacifist definitely made a mark for me, and kind of rounding up. But this, if I had to like put it rank, would be definitely high. Is the debut release from Viltimas, Something Wicked Marches In. Man, David
Yeah.
Vincent, you haven't heard him in this kind of crushing death metal thing, which you kind of knew him of, kind of Morbid Angel.
I actually thought that would make it to your top 5.
Yeah, it was very hard. This is the thing with this, right? Is that
I've heard a lot of praise about it. In fact, I think Banger TV Sam Dunn, he had it as his album of the year.
dude, what a brilliant release. And even like, you keep David Vincent aside, I haven't heard flow like this from Cryptopsy in ages, man. I mean, like, wow, what an album. And this is the thing, right? No hype, nothing else, no major push.
It was, yeah.
Just, and this
And
is
it's
the way.
surprising that a lot of people haven't woken up to it yet.
Yeah,
Or
I
at
mean,
least if they have, then it's not reflected in the
I had
list.
it in my music on my mind release. So if you haven't checked out, just to wrap up, Cryptos, Afterburner, Lord, Fallen Idols, Marijana, Istana, Noisem, Cease to Exist, Pacifist, Grayscale Games, and Viltama, Something Wicked Marches In. So yeah, these were the honorable mentions for me. Trust me, it was very hard to, like, they almost were there, but yeah, after I kind of went through everything and then I revisited the list, I knew my top 5 were there. So
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't do an honorable mentions thing. Like, I didn't prepare for it. So I'm just going to read through my list of 38 and point out the ones that I really feel should have been in my top 5. But because we're limiting them to 5,
Yeah,
we
that's the
just
thing,
can't
right?
include. Most of them you and I have talked about because I've listed them in my earlier picks for music on my mind.
Sure.
Starting off with Big Brave, A Gaze Among Them. This was the
Stoner.
stoner, weird. I don't know what to call it. It was just excellent music. I really enjoyed Gatekeepers Deserted.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was fantastic death
I don't
metal.
know. Again,
And this year's been a really good year for death metal, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's Gatekeeper, there was Two Molds, Planetary Clairvoyance, which was excellent. Devin Townsend, Empath.
I don't like. See,
Right.
that's the thing,
Like-
right?
Like, I would have loved to put it in my top 5 and it would have made it, but yeah, I just
There's
didn't.
only
I,
space for
I,
5.
I think I didn't end up spending a lot of time with it because it was so much of a effort to listen to.
Yeah.
Waste of Space Orchestra, Synthiosis. I'm surprised. I don't know. This may come up in your top 5, but Spirit Adrift didn't make it to my top 5.
Not saying anything.
Yeah.
I think that should be an enough
Exactly.
indication.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we'll talk about it later, of course. Black metal from Falls. Falls released an excellent album called Portent. Torches Admission, which was
Oh yeah.
by far Torches Admission and Conjurer and Pins.
Oh dude.
Curse These Metal Hands. Those are the albums that Baroness should have made,
Yeah.
but they didn't. Ghost released such a fantastic Valediction.
Yeah.
I heard it again recently just to remind myself of how this album was, and I can't believe that a synthwave project would sound more metal than most metal projects do. Astrosaur had Obscuroscope, Capil Ardientes, The Siege, Despised Icon's Purgatory, which of course
Yeah.
is deathcore. Fange's Punir, Iapit is The Body Cosmic, Horncific Aris Could Fly. I'm just listing down almost each and everything. Officium Triste, fantastic release on Transcending Obscurity, released last month only, or this month actually, in December itself. The Death of Gaia, what a beautiful album that was. And again, it just came out too late.
These guys have been around for like 2 decades.
Yeah.
But what was your highlight of that album, if I can only take a second out of it?
It has to be that entire sound, man. I don't...
That orchestral piece
that
was
orchestral piece was
beautiful.
was awesome. I'll give a shout out to Sitar Metal too. I mean, yeah, it's been done before, but not realized to this potential that it has. And this is an album that I wasn't very happy with, or which I passed off as a gimmick at the very first listen. But then, luckily, got around to hearing a lot more, and then we just had that fantastic chat with Rishabh.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of
Oh, dude, a lot.
a lot.
Yeah. That's
a lot.
that's a
It's-
problem, right? Like,
and there's just so much music that was really good music.
so see, the thing with us doing music on our mind and the whole discovery process and stuff is, we've been passing on a lot of
Notes,
and
a lot
things
of
like
notes,
that.
a
So
lot of common.
it's very hard, and I'm actually quite keen to see how much of our top 5 are like. I think last year we had far more than we expected, right?
In terms of alikeness, no. Last year we didn't have any album that was mutually as part of our top 5.
We did?
No,
Wow,
we didn't.
okay.
But it ended up being both albums that we both had on our top 10s or our top 15s that ended up being part of our top 5s.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, there was just mutual respect about each pick. It wasn't... I don't think there was a big debate about, holy shit, how did this album come onto your top 5 or anything of that sort. All right, chalo. A lot of time has been spent just building up to the 5. So let's
get done with this foreplay.
Let's just get down with this. Starting off with number 5.
Go on.
I start?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. At number 5 for me is Blood Incantation's Hidden History of the Human Race. Is it on your list?
No.
It didn't even make your honorable mentions.
Yeah, because I just didn't get enough time to spend with it, man. That's
Okay.
the thing.
Cool. I'll buy that. If you haven't spent enough time with it, I think you should. It's released on Dark Descent Records. I genuinely thought you would have spent a lot more time with it because I was excited to discuss this with you. It's one of the most hyped albums of this year, and
that artwork, man.
Yeah, the
There's so
artwork.
much talk about it.
Yeah, the artwork. But more than just the artwork, I think it's the sound that really got people talking. I would say believe in the hype, because this album to me is an organic evolution of death metal. It doesn't feel contrived in that sense. It's not innovation or gimmicky for the sake of being innovative or gimmicky. It's a death metal album that is enjoyed as an album, and how rare for a death metal album to be enjoyed as an album these days. And I think that's purely because it paces itself so well. It allows you to breathe. It allows you to savor what you've just experienced. There are passages where essentially it lets you, reflect back on what you've heard, which I thought was excellent. It's been designed as an album. I don't think it's been designed as 5 separate songs or 6 separate songs strung together as an album. It doesn't meander. It doesn't get you distracted. And of course, that 18-minute long song which closes the album, I think it gives Nile a run for its money with its song title. I didn't realize it at that time when I first heard it, but upon revisiting it, the song title is Awakening from the Dream of Existence to the Multidimensional Nature of Our Reality. It's 18 minutes long and you don't realize it, and that's what I really enjoyed about this. I don't know where that time I spent with the album went away, because it truly felt like a complete trip. It celebrates everything that death metal is known for, and then it goes on and adds that special touch to it. I truly think a signature sound has been born, and I think it's one sound that I dare say won't be topped even by the band itself.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I heard a couple of singles, but I completely see where you're coming from, because this is a band. I've heard their previous album. They're doing something with death metal which is very unique. Like they're taking
It's very unique, yeah.
So I think I'll keep it at that, but I'm definitely gonna revisit.
Check it out. It should be like, if it's not made your list, then it definitely make your albums that you missed out on 2019.
I believe you. Trust me.
Lovely.
Just for the.
ठीक है.
So
What's your number 5?
this shouldn't come as a surprise to you, and metal, not metal, whatever you want to call it or not, Cloud Kicker Unending. And the reason it's made my top 5 is, man, I'm at this time, after listening to Cloud Kicker for almost 8 years or so,
Yeah, it has been that
Pen
long.
Sharp continues to amaze me, man, with the kind of soundscape, the kind of moves he makes, or kind of things he decides to do on the album. I still haven't got tired of listening to this album. Like, I still sometimes just go pick it up, whether it's on my phone, the
Okay.
MP3s, because I actually bought the album because I was like, full support, man. This guy, what he does. And the thing about I really enjoy about this album is each time I listen to it, there'll be a part where I was like, wait, I don't remember hearing this the last time. Wow, did he do that now? And then also, because I've been listening to the band for a while, or listening to Ben for a while, you kind of make relations to his earlier music also.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I remember this sounds familiar, but he's done it in a completely different way. So
I'd love to see what happened on this album as a live thing. Maybe Intronaut can be the backing band again, because that live with Intronaut set, that kind of marked the end of one era of Cloud Kicker, and now with this album, he started the next era of sorts.
Yeah,
And excellent music.
all right.
All right.
On to that.
Number 4. Let's bring on number 4. Number 4 for me, Alcest's Spiritual Instinct. And I get where you're coming from on this. Wait, is it part of your list at all? No. Okay. So this one would be my Cloud Kicker pick. Like, would be similar to your Cloud Kicker pick. And that's because I'll tell you, this is how I thought of it. When and why do you become a fan of a band?
Because primarily, I guess, when you hear something that you are familiar with, a familiar sound, but done in a completely new way. So, like, for example, with Alcest, I can see it because they have a sound which you'll hear no matter what, like whether it's a riff or an ambient part, it's Alcest. But the moment you hear it done something different, you're like, wait, what did they do? And that's kind of like, I see where you're coming from.
So, okay, yeah, it's
Cloud
essentially
Kicker,
that, right? Yeah, it's basically you become a fan of their sound, and then you become a super fan when the band doesn't let you down,
Yeah.
right? Cloud Kicker does that. Alcest did that for me. In a year when a lot of the bands that I've been a super fan of, or I am a super fan of, in a year when a lot of those bands have let me down, and we kicked off the episode by talking about one of them, Alcest is one band that didn't.
Yeah, no,
Naysayers will opine that this album doesn't add anything new to their sound, and I'll tell them to politely fuck off. It's the same reason why Cloud Kicker is on your list, I think.
I don't know completely, and I
right?
think I know exactly where you're going with it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Spiritual Instinct, that's the album's name. It came out on Nuclear Blast. It's actually one of the few albums that lives up to the cliche of my current album is heavier than my all previous existing albums, and it is. It's meatier, it's heavier, and it once again manages to let you drown out whatever's happening around you. And that's exactly the reason why I've spent so much time with it and why Alcest is there as my number 4.
So, kind of crazy transition into my number 4 is because, in a strange way, this is what this band does for me too. I've titled him the Swedish death metal machine. If you're surprised who I'm talking about, it's Roger Johansson. This guy spent 25 years with just his band Paganizer. And the release is Paganizer's Tower of the Morbid, which came out on Transcending Obscurity. Now, the thing is, this guy's been doing, if you look him up, he probably this year alone has put 10 albums out with his different projects and stuff like that. But what's cool about Paganizer, it's his longest standing band. And with each release, he keeps topping it up. Like with the last one, Land of the Weeping Soul, I was like, okay, wow, this is the sound. And he's kind of taken that trademark, HM2 death metal, but just keeps topping it more and more. I've put it as, absolutely crushing death metal. For some reason, death metal features a lot on my list. You've seen in the longer list also. But yeah, man, this is something about that, again, familiar. I've heard so much of Swedish death metal and just with that sound. But this guy keeps, I don't know how he does it. And that's what the thing about, Paganizer, I kept listening to the album when I first got it. And I was like, oh yeah, by the 5th listen, I've kind of got it. But I was listening to it the last couple of days and I was like, no man, I still enjoy this. And that's how I really have seen the list, or primarily where my list is that you'd have a familiar sound, or there's been an album I've heard so much, but then by the end of the year, after so many times listening to it, it still sounds that fresh. It still gives you that kick, literally, to put it in no other way, that you're like, yeah man, that feeling that, this is metal, that kind of is. And that's what Paganizer does for me, man. It kind of epitomizes what 2019 metal or death metal should sound like. And I'm pretty sure that's the same thing with Blood Incantation also, right? It's doing something, it's taking that sound which you think, and I'm coming back to what a lot of people say, that, metal has kind of done it. Listen to all the list. So, yeah, listen to all the bands on our list. These are bands that are really pushing the envelope when it comes to what the metal sound is. I want to hear what your number 3 is, man.
Before I get on to my number 3, Paganizer is one thing that I've completely slept on. I haven't even given it a first listen yet. So, yeah, now I have to. Okay, my number 3. My number 3 is something that I've talked about on Music on Our Mind previously. The album's name is The Palms of Sorrowed Kings. It's a release on 20 Buck Spin by a band known as OpsiQI. I previously mentioned it. At that time I didn't know how to pronounce the band name, but now I've researched and OpsiQI. Yeah, that's how you pronounce that. Allow me to digress here a little bit. I have a little bit of a theory. The third album, right, is a special one for a band because it generally tends to sober up a band's signature sound.
Okay.
On the first album, it's your first attempt at letting the world know what your sound is, and it'll be a crazy sound at that. The second one, generally, you either try to beef up or evolve that sound, or you try and go a completely different way. But by the time you hit album number 3, you know the reason why your band appeals, and you know a reason why the band should exist, in my opinion.
And you spent, I think, way enough looking at it, and you can correct me, you spend that much time in the studio, and you've also played that much live, right?
etc. So by the third album, you know what your band is capable of, and you want to just keep sharpening that vision, right? I didn't know that this album was OpsiQI's third. For me, it was their first. Wikipedia describes their music as a mishmash of medieval and melodic black metal with additional influences from doom metal and death metal. Okay, now it sounds like a khichdi.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the best way to summarize it. It is a khichdi.
Okay.
But I'd like to use that descriptor the way the majority of us would use it, which is to describe something that's easy to digest, super tasty, completely wholesome, healthy, and the ultimate comfort food. I generally can't believe that this album was repeated so much by me, because it doesn't really sound like an album that I would really enjoy, but it ended up being one of them. And I think that's because this is a band now that has made a signature sound their own, and are so the focus is razor sharp, and that entire conviction that they have in what they should sound like and what their music should be is what they've managed to translate so beautifully onto this album.
I think the mistake I made with this album is I only heard the single and I didn't kind of venture more.
Yeah, because
And then
that's
from
the
your
thing. The
description,
single,
that's the problem.
exactly. Yeah,
This is an album, you need to like go completely into it, not just hear one song and then
yeah. It's not
get a
something that you
taste.
that you can pass off on one listen.
Okay. Now
Yeah.
it's strange how this is progressing, because I'm just going to build on what you said, which is going to come to my third pick. But my theory goes a little further than the third album.
Okay.
Because when I talked last year about albums I was looking forward to, I mentioned a band called Periphery and their third album,
Yeah.
where I was like, I have no idea how these guys are going to top it. Right? And this was the album I was looking forward to. And for those of you who've heard me gush over their album, Hail Stan, the fourth album on Music on My Mind, now you're going to hear it a little more. Because I was like, dude, how do these guys do it? My theory is on this is, now this is their first independent release.
Yeah.
So they have no label, no timelines, nothing. This is they're doing it on their own. And this time they were like, let's really experiment. Let's like forget what strong structure is. Because I don't think any band I've heard, again, par your major progressive bands, put out their first song as an 18-minute track. The first track in the 18-minute track, Reptile. And for me, that was a very ballsy statement. Of course, when you talk about Periphery, you cannot not say the gent word and things like that. But these guys have come far more. Like, again, a band I've been following for a while. So you've really seen their sound evolve into what I would say now is truly progressive.
Correct.
When it comes.
It's almost like what or how Pig Destroyer is to grindcore. They've gone beyond grindcore, and
and
would agree. Periphery with Hailstan have gone beyond gent.
Yeah, this is way beyond, because like, and for me, this is, I would love to see this band be like a gateway band for a lot of other people to get into metal, because this is, when you listen to like a few of the songs, you wouldn't categorize them as metal. You can sing along to it. There are heavy parts and things like that. And for me, that's what exciting, right? Is after so many years also of listening to metal, I can still listen to this album and be like, wow. Again, a band, it's when I was looking at my stats, I was like, wait, I listened to this album so much, I had no idea. But that's what I really enjoyed about the album. And I even bought the CD because I was like, yeah, man, this is something I need to have as part of my collection. So that's how much I liked this album.
Lovely.
Let's get into number 2 because this is where it gets really hot.
Okay, chalo. I'll go first. I haven't mentioned this on Music on Our Mind, so it's a new pick. The band's name is None. The album's name is Damp Chill of Life.
All right.
It's a release on Hypnotic Dirge Records. It's been introduced to me fairly recently, and I'm surprised that within the last 2 months, I've managed to make it number 2 on my top 5 list. And I think that's because of the times that we are in. 2019, to no one's surprise, has been a very tough year, especially with what's going on around us.
You can't deny that. Right?
You can't deny that at all. There's a sense of hopelessness with the world. There's a sense of disillusionment that everyone has. And if that's the sentiment that defines 2019 for you, as it has for a lot of us, including me, then Nun's Damn Chill of Life makes the perfect soundtrack to the times we live in, because it genuinely is the bleakest, coldest album of the year. It's They say misery loves company, right? You've heard that?
Yeah.
I I thought angry metal guy kind of encapsulated it best. He by saying this thing doesn't merely sound like misery, it sounds like fucking freezing to death.
Okay.
This album genuinely is something that I'm scared to listen to over and over again because it makes me shrivel up in a corner and wish I didn't exist in the world. It's obviously DSBM.
Yeah.
It's if you're a fan of DSBM, you'll love it. If you're not a fan of music that actually helps you emote or just switches on emotions, you won't enjoy it because this thing will do things to you.
Right.
And for that reason alone, because I think this may be I think a lot of my top 5 releases essentially made me emote, and this one just does it to the degree where I'm like, fuck this world.
Okay.
I've had enough of it.
So I'm gonna hold my thoughts on that because it shouldn't come as a surprise. There's a reason why album number 1 is album number 1. But just to give you a slight preview, it's for the very same reasons. But yeah, man, that sounds like an album I'd like to listen. But
So
for
here's
the very
thing,
same
right?
reasons, right?
While you have death metal that lets you be angry, there's
Yeah.
just times when you've had enough of the anger and you just lost in a sense of why does it matter even more? And I wish everything would just like nothing seems to resolve the way it needs to resolve, and basically you've had all your anger seep out. This is the album that helps me do that.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
depressive stuff.
Back onto death metal for me, and the only way I'm going to introduce this album is fucking Nile.
This
Man.
is fucking nice.
I
This
don't
is-
think this is. Could have introduced it any better than the way Carl
It should
Sanders
have
did.
been on my honorable list or even my long list, and I think it was. The only reason I didn't include it is because we've talked about it so much.
But yeah, man.
What a fucking masterpiece of an album.
So like, if I said everything I said about Paganizer
Yeah.
that I did, dude, Nile just topped that, and there's only a reason why it's ahead of Paganizer, man. I still remember getting the promo, listening to it. I heard the streaming tracks first, and I was like, what are these guys on?
Yeah, I
man?
remember that very first. We got the album earlier because of the interview that we did with Carl Sanders. And yes, this is a cheap plug, but please
go
go
check
back
it
and
out.
listen to it because it's a fantastic interview. But man, I still can't believe how angular and sharp and focused this
From-
music was.
Hey, from the first track itself, Shadow of Dread, man, you know this is like, and this is the thing I keep coming back to, and sorry I'm repeating it, but Nile has that sound, which is only Nile. But then when you hear this song, you're like, oh boy, what are these guys on? And to think that this album has come in, like we talked earlier about, album 3, album 4, dude, this is like album 8, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And these guys still have it. One thing
I think they rediscovered it.
I think it's like they're like
It's a
phoenix.
rebirthed, yeah. It is that. It's not a.
What's cool about this album is if I give this to somebody saying who's never heard Nile before, I give them this album and say, hey, check out this band called Nile. They're gonna enjoy it as much as somebody who's been listening to Nile
To
like
Nile for a
15
really
years.
long time, yeah.
So that's why this is definitely high up on my pick. Nile while Nilotic writes, man, this is like why I feel doing a top 5 is so hard. But man,
Yeah.
I keep saying death metal was killing it this year. Every genre or subgenre of metal has been killing it. But come on, are we gonna do this together? Let's say it together.
Let's say it out loud.
Yeah.
Okay. On the count of 3 then, okay?
Yeah.
But wait, before that, do you want to just summarize your number 5 to number 2?
Okay, let's.
Yeah.
I'll do mine first. Then
Yeah,
you can do
yeah.
yours. Number 5 was Cloud Kicker Unending. Number 4, Paganizer, Tower of the Morbid. Number 3, Periphery. 4, Hail Stan. 2 is Nile while Nilotic writes.
Okay. Number 5, Blood Incantation, Hidden History of the Human Race. Alcest at number 4 with Spiritual Instinct. At number 3, you have OpsEQI with The Palms of Sorrowed Kings. And at number 2 was None with Damn Chill of Life.
3,
3, 2, 1. Cryptos
Spirited Drift.
Afterburner.
Oh man! That I didn't see coming.
How could you not see it coming? How could you not
You didn't
see
even
it
react
coming?
when I did the long list. Huh?
Which is why I asked you to continue with your picks, because I was like, oh my god, how am I going to bring it up again? But okay, wait. First,
let's do rock, paper, scissors. Who's going first?
okay, fine. Rock, paper, scissors. Damn it. We
Rock,
both picked paper. We both picked scissors. Rock, paper, scissors. Fuck, we both picked paper. Rock, paper, scissors. Shut up.
Okay.
Peter, you're up first.
So everything you said about the Nun album, right?
Yeah.
That's how I feel about Spirit Adrift, and that's why I didn't want to talk more about it. But man, personally, 2019 has been such a year for me, and I think that's probably a reflection of why Spirit Adrift Divided by Darkness is my number one pick. I mean, keeping emotions aside, the album has the fine line between heavy metal and doom metal, so it's going to appeal to both.
It's a fantastic release.
Yeah, dude.
There's no two ways of looking at it.
And what a year for the guys, because you mentioned Gatekeeper, right? They share members with Gatekeeper, and that what a year it's been with. You have both albums come out, topping lists all over for sure. But coming back to the emotions part, man, one thing I like about this album is while it really made me reflect, and at some points you're like really low, but it has that part where, you know, like listening to a song like Born in Fire and stuff like that, it gives you that hope, or there is that, you know, as cliche it'll be, the ray of light at the end of the tunnel. It gave me that, and that's why I kept going back to the album where, and sometimes I just kept playing songs on loop because I was like, yeah, this is how I feel. And, you know, again, I shouldn't be surprised. I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise that a non-death metal album kind of made it, because hey, you can sing along to this track, right? And you kind of feel it. And you know, we talked about our favorite bands and singing along in the last episode, but that's exactly how I felt. Like this, if I was much younger, I'd be like rocking out in front of the mirror with this, like, singing by it. But dude, I think you put it well. But trust me, like looking around, and again, this is partly as a parent also. When I look at the state of the world around us, and it's not just India, it's everywhere.
It's around the world,
It's all around the world. It just makes me realize that what kind of life my son is going to lead, what kind of world is he coming into. So this past year has been a lot of me reflecting on that. Probably my picks kind of reflect that also. But yeah, man, like I just feel that, you know, 2019, if it's been this, oh man, 2020 is going to be where are we going?
Where are we going? I think both of us ended up picking our top album as in the number one, because it's a product of the times we live in. And Cryptos' Afterburner, weirdly enough, and you'll hear my reasoning for it now, and you'll not be surprised at all. Of course, if you've been a regular listener to this podcast, then it shouldn't surprise you one bit, because I've kept gushing about Afterburner at every mention of the band's name, at every opportunity that presents itself.
I still remember sitting in your car listening to the single, remember? Red Dawn.
I'm thanking you for it, because if it wasn't like after that interview we did with Nolan, the very first one, it wasn't even an interview, when he joined us for Versus, our very first Versus. After that night, oh my god, right? Yeah. So here's how I'm gonna help you understand why this one was number one. I'm assuming you've watched Ratatouille.
Yeah.
You watched Ratatouille?
Of course.
You remember that scene at the very end when the critic Anton Ego, he has a bite of the ratatouille and it transports him back to his childhood memory.
Yeah.
And then he comes back out, and in his review, right after that, he begins the review by saying, in many ways, the work of a critic is easy. And that's not to say that we are critics, but because we do act like ones at some level, that's why I chose to lead with this line. In many ways, the work of a critic is easy. We risk very little, yet enjoy a position over those who offer up their work and themselves to our judgment. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to read and to write. But the bitter truth we critics must face is that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticism designating it so. Now, why I'm reading that out is because most people that have heard Cryptos' Afterburner agree that it's very good music, but most people will not put it on their list because it's not maybe superlative enough, right? To that, again, I give them a big fuck you. My reaction to Afterburner, actually, the very first track I heard, which was Red Dawn, and that's thanks to you, was similar to Anton Ego's in that scene when he tastes Ratatouille at the final stage. It took me back to a time when I was discovering metal or discovering the world that was heavy metal. It took me back to when everything was new to me. It took me back to a time when I didn't understand why I enjoyed this music. Right? It took me back to a time when Iron Maiden, Metallica, Judas Priest were new things to me. They were all these, and I understood that they were legends, and I was branding their logos onto my heart, scribbling them down on walls, doodling them into diaries, scratching them onto desks. I don't really know why it's a great album. Okay, because
There's no formula to a great
a
album.
lot of similar sounding NWO BHM albums have released this year. Riot City was something that made both of us appreciate it. Smolder, Magic. I don't know. There's so many that do the same sound. So many trad metal albums that have been released this year, and I think old school metal is something that's seeing a resurgence of sorts. But Kryptos managed to produce an album that takes everything that I love about heavy metal and present it to me like I've never heard it before. I genuinely think this album is a love letter to heavy metal, and dare I say, a love letter to anyone who's ever held their horns up. And I think after hearing your pick for number one and listening just the kind of talk we've been having this entire time, I think why Kryptos' Afterburner is number one for me is because it takes me back to a time when just life was simpler.
Yeah. I think I don't want to like take away from anything you said because you've put it right there, and like there's
It brings me happiness.
yeah. I mean that's why it was in my long list, and I'm telling you, all those other albums that were there, it's like by a hairline kind of
Exactly.
missed there.
That isn't to say that none of the other albums brought me happiness, but this one just helps me relive that happiness whenever I push play.
Now you know what's a curious case is that we have in our long list at least a lot of similar albums. But it's been a fun exercise. I'm glad. That's the thing. I mean, I'm glad you put it that we're not like critiques, because for me, I don't listen to metal because I want to criticize it or I have to look at it objective.
It's because we genuinely enjoy heavy metal, and it brings us something that no other music.
And that's why that reflects
delivers.
in our top
that
five.
Reflects in our talks. That reflects in our top five. That reflects just in horns up.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Now I'm very curious to know what everyone else has on their list, because I'm now going to finally go and read other people's top 10s, because
I genuinely don't think you will find a list as diverse of top 10 albums as ours.
I mean, it's our take, man. It's our take. I don't think anyone else. I'll be very shocked to know if even our top fives match with
anyone's. Yeah.
Which is going to be very rare.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Glad. Can't believe it's been a year of doing this, but it's been a great exercise. I'm really excited for the next few episodes, because this time we're doing it a little different compared to last year.
Yeah. Last year we wrapped up our picks of the year with a pick of live best shows, pick of live shows, etc. that we've really enjoyed ourselves at. This year we're going to try and do that a bit differently. You'll have to wait till next week to find out what we are doing. Of course, Peter will curate the playlist, etc., so that you can enjoy the albums that we've really enjoyed.
And hit us up with what made your top 5 or top 10 if you manage to do that, man. It'll be very tough.
It'll be very tough, yeah. Yeah, we are at hornsuppod.com. That's one place where you can contact us individually or contact us as just one podcast. I'm not going to give out Twitter IDs, etc., because now I think we should just focus on hornsuppod.com.
Yep.
Yeah.
We have a website.
Until
next time, guys.
Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, stay
Cheers.
metal.
Horns up.
Horns up.